Yo, what's happening, y'all? It's your man Valentine, baby. Coming to you from on the grind. Man, you know how it go down, man. Listen, it's the home edition. I want to give it to y'all outside, but you know what I mean? It's a little windy, the sun's gone down. But if I was to do this later, the sun would come up. But right now, we gonna handle our business. So, yesterday, I'm talking about education, man. And we talking about to our man, the Education Minister, Mr. Rob Fleming. And so I'm gonna give it to him again. I'm gonna put him on blast again today. But right now, we got to talk about it's gonna be big news because next week, I think the Edmonton Eskimos, they're gonna change their name. You know what I mean? So, and the Washington Redskins, they changing their name too. We don't know when it's gonna happen, but it's gonna happen. And they in some hot water right now with some other stuff that's going on. So, you know what I mean? It's gonna happen. So these things gotta happen, man. And change is definitely gonna come. So then, y'all must have saw the George Floyd, the tapes that came out, the body cam. The dude was just pleading for his life. And at all times, the man was very respectable, even though he was dying. And yet, that officer, or all four of them, you know what? They didn't care. They didn't care about this man's life. But, I don't know, man. Y'all got to look at that tape and see. It's sad. And then, the dudes who shot Ahmaud Arbery, imagine this, y'all. They pleaded not guilty. I mean, really? Not guilty. I can't even call that one, man. But anyway. Now, like I said yesterday, Mr. Education Minister Rob Fleming, you need to do something about Black history, indigenous studies in school, because there's a lot of history that we're not seeing or we don't even know about. There's a lot of history that I need to know about. It's not just Canadian Black history, because Canadian Black history should be in every school. Indigenous history should be in every school, because many of things that happen in Victoria or even across Canada, you go right from Victoria to Salmon Arm to all these islands and across to Nova Scotia, and you know how the indigenous population goes from all the way from Montreal all the way across to BC. So we need to learn these things. And then we need to get not just Canadian Black history and indigenous history. We need to get American Black history. You feel what I'm saying? And the indigenous history of the Indians in America. Because we're missing all of that in our schools. And until you get that in schools, we will not know. These kids will not know they passed. You feel what I'm saying? So the fact that we need to learn about, say, in Canadian history, we know that we talked about Emory Barnes yesterday, and how Emory Barnes did his thing, being a football player, politician, and champion of socioeconomic rights for poor people, right? I mean, you've got to have that in schools. And then if we think about indigenous history, we have to go back to this dude. This man, I couldn't believe this. And I'm gonna give you one another, because I'm gonna go back to Harry Jerome as well. But this dude, Tom Longboat, I could not believe that this man actually, he won the Boston Marathon in 1907. If you don't study indigenous history, you're not gonna know that. And the dude won in a time of 2:24. I mean, 2:24 is amazing. It would have won several other marathons. And where I'm going with this is because when the dude won the marathon, he was promised like $500. In today's marathon, if you win the Boston Marathon, you get $150,000. And it wasn't that he got the $500, it was promised to him. So they actually didn't even give him the $500. You know what I mean? Till recently. And they gave him a check for $10,000. Man, come on, man. Everyone that wins the Boston Marathon gets a check for $150,000, male or female. So how is it that this man they only gave him a check for $10,000, $500 plus interest, 1907? I'm thinking that they should have gave him $150,000 plus interest. Winning the Boston Marathon, yo. See, this is history that we want to know about, because there are athletes that are indigenous that want to look to somebody that they can see that is of their face. You know what I mean? Somebody they can look up to and say, hey, you know what? That dude's like me. So, Minister, Education Minister, Mr. Rob Fleming, you need to get that in. And then we think about that we have Harry Jerome, another guy. I know I talk about all the athletes because Harry Jerome's like, you know, you have the Harry Jerome Classic at Swangard Stadium. You have the Oval. You have his statue, but yet nobody knows about the guy. 6-time world champion, an Olympic record holder. You know what I mean? And also, he was another guy who's champion of civil rights, and also socioeconomic reasons, things that he was doing for the community. You see? I mean, these people embody what we need to have in high schools. You know what I mean? So you need to get these Canadian Black history and Indigenous history into high school from K to 12. Minister Fleming, you need to get it done. And then I'm gonna go to the American side, where we talk about, like, say, Thurgood Marshall. A good show on Netflix called Thurgood. You can watch that one. And then we have Rosa Parks. If it wasn't for Rosa Parks in the Alabama bus strikes, listen, black folks, we would not be able to sit in the front of the bus. You know what I mean? So you need to get into Black history on the American side as well. And Jesse Owens, greatest of all time. Muhammad Ali. You know what I mean? alias Cassius Clay. Medgar Evers. Emmett Till. You see what I'm saying? And then if we think about the indigenous portion of it, where you got American and Canadian, so we got to go both. So now we go with, say, I'm gonna go with the athletes again, because this man was amazing, and his name was James Francis Thorpe. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of this man. I know I did. But this man was basketball, baseball, football, soccer, running track and field. This man won the pentathlon and the decathlon in the 1951 Olympics. No, 1912 Olympics, sorry. The Olympics, he was the first Native American to win a gold medal. Not just in one discipline, in two. Decathlon and pentathlon. I'm not even going to tell y'all what that is because I want y'all to look that up. And you know how they treated this man? This man couldn't even get a job during the Depressional time because he had to do crazy things like he was a garbage man, but he liked being a garbage man and doing some other stuff. And then he did some films. And he was actually, he was homaged in a film with Burt Lancaster called The All-American. And this was in 1951. So this is the film that you can actually look up and watch to see James Francis Thorpe and see how good of an athlete this man was, or good of a person he was. You know what I mean? And then you've also got to look up some of the native Indians or indigenous people that are in America, in the Navajo tribe, in the Cherokee and Apache, and all the things that they have in the U.S. to help with Native American studies. You feel what I'm saying? So we need to get this into schools. Education Minister, Mr. Fleming, and everyone else, all the teachers, you need to sit there and start thinking about how can we get our population, black people and indigenous people, to learn about our history and not let the history fall by the wayside because people are watering it down. Teaching about they don't teach about residential schools the way they're supposed to teach about residential schools. They don't teach about the black history, about the Underground Railroad coming from the South and into Canada. You know what I mean? So you need to get that done. This is where things like this is why people are so passionate about race relations, because we as black people can't get our history to be taught to us because white folks keep saturating it and watering it down. You know what I mean? So you need to get some teachers. This is a great time to get a job for black teachers and indigenous teachers, and put them in schools. I mean, this is what we're looking for. We want to have our history in schools, and young kids today need to learn about their history. You know what I mean? Harriet Tubman. You feel what I'm saying? This needs to happen. This is something that has to happen. And remember that the socioeconomic reasons, the institutionalized racism, the police brutality, the police profiling, social profiling, the biases, complicit biases from businesses and workplace. People, we need to make the change. We need to get these things into schools. And Minister Fleming, this is what you need to do. This is all we ask. Because I, for one, want to learn more. And I know there's people out there who want to learn more as well. So, all the names I said to you today, these are people that we need to start looking up on the Canadian side and the American side. You know what I mean? There's change is going to come. Oh, I also have to put in, you know what? Y'all need to look up Tommie Smith and John Carlos in the 1968 Olympics. You need to understand what happened to Tommie Smith and John Carlos for raising that fist. Now they have a lady in Bristol, England. Her name is, they just changed the statue, and her name is, I don't remember her name is Joan something, but they put a lady with a fist on a as a monument. And they just did that this week in Bristol, England. So there we go. I mean, times are changing. So this is something that we want. So think about Tommie Smith and John Carlos in the 1968 Olympics. This is where that came from. So Now you do your research and get educated. You see? Why we need to put this in school. Yo, remember, we're also in this pandemic. And people, you need to understand that a mask is very important. You cannot make a mask being political. You feel what I'm saying? So you need to stay safe. The mask will help you protect yourself and your family. And young people, do not be selfish, because this virus does not care how fit or how young you are. So make sure you stay safe by wearing a mask, hand sanitize, social distance, and do your thing to stay safe and keep your whole family safe. You feel what I'm saying? Yo, you know, listen, man. Man Valentine, baby. If you think it's your time to shine, you need to get on the grind with your man Valentine. You know what I'm going to say. Education minister. Do your thing. Do the right thing.